we've got our guest patiently waiting. We are going to go to the telephones, and you're live on the Sunday radio broadcast. How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you this morning?
Pretty good, actually. I'm glad you're on with us today. We usually let the guests do their own introductions, just in case I miss anything, or as I like to say, I'm kind of an idiot. So go ahead and jump in there. Give us a brief introduction on yourself, my friend. Tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, I have been working with ADD and ADHD since the late 90s, and I first came upon it because it came into my own personal spiritual coaching and counseling practice, and I recognized it not as a disease, disorder, or disability, but really a gift, and it led to me actually doing my doctoral thesis on it. I've put out 5 books on ADD, ADHD since then, and I've spoken around the world about why we shouldn't be making our children, especially our children, but anyone, laboratory rats or cash cows for the pharmaceutical companies. A little bit about the ADD, ADHD side of the Dr. Kevin brand, for lack of a better term, along with the fact that I myself discovered along the journey, I didn't know it at the time when I started the journey, that I'm an ADD poster child. So it kind of all made sense. How's that for an introduction?
That's fantastic. We have got Dr. Kevin with us today. He joins us live here on our big program, coast to coast, border to border on iHeartRadio, AMFM247.com. Get more information at mydrkevin.com. And Dr. Kevin joins us here on the telephone, talking with us about symptoms of ADHD and some of the different things that you need to be watching out for. First of all, you have got a fabulous book, Managing the Gift of Your ADHD Child. Why did you decide to name that way?
Well, because I do see it as a gift. And, when I was back in the late 90s, when I was first introduced and I started working with a lot of ADD and ADHD children and adults, and went on to use it as my doctoral thesis, I define ADD as an evolutionary process broadening the bandwidth of humanity, not a disease, disorder, or disability. And that these individuals have a disability, they learn and process information differently, which is, I said in my first book on the subject, which came out in 2000.
Wow.
And so when we start to look and say, there are challenges, I don't think that there's anything out there that doesn't come with some challenges. The question is, what's the difference between a challenge, which you can manage and work with, and a disability? And I think that with a lot of millions and millions of dollars marketing money spent by pharmaceuticals and the American Psychiatric Association, and even and at times the educational lobbyist groups and stuff like that, that we stuck at a disability label because it either made it easier or it made lots of people lots of money. So that's why that's the title of that book.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that, my friend. We have got Dr. Kevin Ross Emery with us today. He joins us live here in our broadcast. He is a best-selling author, host of the Dr. Kevin Show, and he joins today here on our big program. And this book, Managing the Gift of Your ADHD Child, is absolutely amazing. Talk to us about the writing process for this book.
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to make a lot of your listeners jealous because there was 2 parts. I maintain a full-time practice, and I have over a dozen books out and CDs and then DVDs, and I teach. And so when I write, I kind of go into shut myself out for the world. I take a whole day or 2 days, and I kind of write it. I started by going back to all the research information that I did on my first book, and then I had a couple of other books that came out in between those. And then I actually worked with an editor who had an ADD husband and a couple of ADD children who kept on pushing me from the parents' view and kept on going through there and saying, tell me more about this, tell me more about this, tell me how this applies to my child. And she kept pushing me to get clearer. She kept pushing me to say, that's not going to be helpful to a parent. It sounds good, and I don't disagree with you, but how can we make this more helpful for the parent? I go home to this. I get the calls from the school system on this. How can we? How can we? How can we? And so she really drove me to produce a book that can really benefit parents and educators if they go through it and start to understand how these ADD children's minds are working, and then how can we support it? How can we recognize that if we say it this way versus that way, they can hear it? If we are more interactive and inclusive in dialogues, we get a whole lot further. And that, and this is how you apply it in real life. Her question to me was, in real life, in real life, in real life. Now, the reason I say it's going to make, it perhaps will make some of you and your listeners jealous, is that we did the whole last part of the process with me flying to Hawaii for a month, stepping out of my business altogether, and doing stuff every morning for several hours from sunrise in Hawaii, because she was on the East Coast, until mid-morning, and then taking the rest of the day to let it all cogitate. Well, I was going to luau's and snorkeling and, doing zip lining, because that all helps me process. So that was my writing process. Jealous?
Fantastic stuff. We have got Dr. Kevin Ross Emery with us today. He joins us live here on the telephone, talking a little bit about this incredible book that he's put together, Managing the Gift of Your ADHD Child. And tell us about some of the different reviews you've gotten on the book so far.
Oh, some of the different reviews. I've heard things from, it's been called the Owner's Manual for the ADD Brain. It's been reviewed as, somebody called it a must-have if you or somebody you love has ADHD. I don't keep these reviews memorized. Those are the couple that stood out to me. I know that the book has been praised both by parents and educators who have found it healthy and helpful. So, anyways.
Fantastic. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery with us today. He joins us live. He's the author of Managing the Gift of Your ADHD Child, and he's with us today here on the telephone, here on the Sunday radio broadcast, and a fantastic book out there, and you can get more information on his website, mydrkevin.com. That's mydrkevin.com. And what are some of the insights that can help us move forward with ADD and HD?
Well, first of all, look at the fact that one of the conclusions I've come up with after 20 years of working with this is that the H part is often managed through habits and diet. That the H can go from being a type, we used to call them type A personalities, right? We'd try to, if we watched them run around, our heads would spin and we'd look like Linda Blair on The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were always somewhere. At some point, that got kicked into non-productive hyperactivity, and that's the key, non-productive hyperactivity, through bad diet, incorrect environmental structures, and a lack of habits or patterns that they could adopt and would be willing to adopt that would then move them back more into that type A category where they could have high productive, high energy. And there's nothing wrong with high productive, high energy. In fact, we have multimillionaire billionaires out there who either self-identify or, have been identified as ADD or ADHD, and a lot of times had DH for periods in their life where they got a great deal done, but they could turn it into productivity. Now, the one thing I want to especially remind parents, because we're talking about my children's book, is I want to remind parents that inappropriate diet, inappropriate structures, and giving your power away to incorrect labeling and diagnosing destroy self-worth, self-esteem. If you teach them that I'm going to give you a pill so you behave the way everyone else wants you to behave, then it's a short step to when they go into their rebellious teens, well, now I'm going to choose the pill I'm going to take to have the behaviors that I want to have or the experiences I want to have because you've trained me it's okay to take a pill. And so I want parents to understand what is at stake here and that it's easier to give them a pill, drug them up, dumb them down. The school stops complaining less. They may still get good grades. They may even get better grades because we've drugged them up to a point where... But think of that statement, James. We're drugging them to a point where they're not so bored. They can pay attention because we sliced off enough of them through medication that they can now pay attention to something that's not challenging them, that they're not being engaged in, that they're not made co-responsible for in a positive way that makes I think it's a 15-year-old who's getting ready to graduate with a PhD from, is it MIT or Harvard? I mean, there's a few of these stories out, but these kids, and one in particular, and I don't have the story in front of me, but it's easy enough to find, are getting doctorates at 14 and 15, but at 10 or 11, it's because their parents took them out of school systems and refused to have them medicated, homeschooled them, and they were brilliant, but at 10 or 11, they wanted to medicate them so that they could fit in the classroom. And I want parents to hear these stories and know really what's at risk.
We have got a great guest with us today. Joins us live here in our broadcast, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery. He's with us today here in our big program, and he has got a fantastic book out there. He's the author of Managing the Gift of Your ADHD Child. He joins us today here on the telephone. And what do you want readers to take away from your writing this great book?
What I want people to take away from is that they have not only a choice but a responsibility to do what's in the best interest of their child, not them and not their system, not the system. I want them to understand that if they started to look at all the gifts, that these kids are brilliant, that they're creative, they can come up with completely different ways to solve problems or see things in the world, that they have come to us to basically save our backsides from all the problems that we have created in this world through greed and corruption, and they will have brilliant, insightful solutions if they're supported, that these kids have become consistently world-famous actors and artists and singers, and they've become your Steve Jobs, and they've become your Bill Gates, and they've become your Warren Buffetts, and they have been changing the world in positive ways. And all of these people changing the world in the positive ways, or almost all of them that I know of, all of these that I've researched, and the celebrities and the famous people that have changed the world, none of them were medicated, or almost none of them were ever medicated. Maybe they tried it a little bit. Michael Phelps, with all of his gold medals, as soon as his mother took him off the medication and put him in the pool, he was fine. So don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't think your kid is broken.
Fantastic.
Don't be manipulated into medicating them. And look at the fact that your child is here to change the world and will do great things if you will recognize that potential lies in them and support them to reach that potential. That's what I want them to know.
Fantastic. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery with us today. Now, Doctor, before we let you go, how do we find you online, social media, websites, everything?
Okay. Well, we have mydrkevin.com, MYDRKEVIN.com. We also have a My Dr. Kevin Facebook fan page. You can like that page where I also post my weekly radio show, so you can always tune in live and ask questions. every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can call in and ask me any questions you want on any of the things I do. Because I'm an ADD poster child, I do 1,000 things.
That's awesome.
They can listen to the radio show. We get all those links on my Facebook page, My Dr. Kevin. And if you go to any social media that I'm on, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, MYDRKEVIN, you'll be able to hook up with me. You can hook up with my website. You can hook up with my YouTube channel, YouTube, My Dr. Kevin. You can hook up places. I put out a ton of video and content on a variety of subjects, but there's always stuff out there about ADD and ADHD.
Fantastic. Well, you are pretty amazing, my friend, and I appreciate you making time for us today.
Absolutely. Thrilled to be here. Happy to come back and talk about more about this, or I don't know, there's a dozen other different things we could talk about, and I'm sure have a great time.
Yes, and we will, my friend. I appreciate you making time for us today. Have yourself a good holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Have a good holiday weekend. Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you. There he goes, Dr. Kevin. And we are going to take a time out and come back with more. It is the world famous Jiggy Jaguar radio broadcast back here in a few moments.